Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Today we're continuing our talks that we started in a previous video. So if you're looking for a map update and how it all started, check out the link somewhere on the top here. But we're gonna start. So I gave a thought about what do I want to talk about, a lot of the things that was coming up during the week. And I also wanted to talk about some of the things that you should focus on. And it all kind of uh, came together into a very, very nice, tight package. So today I want to talk to you about the 7 losses of Putin. And these losses are pretty much what defines this war, and this war as a product of how Putin failed. Basically, you can say the downfall or whatnot. There's plenty of fancy names one can assign to this video. We're gonna right away start with the first one, and I think the first loss of Putin in this war was the loss of blitzkrieg. This was the loss when Putin thought that he understands Ukraine, when Putin thought that he understands the Ukrainian people, and when he thought that everyone is basically beneath him and he is the smartest and he has all the data and all the information and he is this big overlord of the Eastern Europe sphere of influence. He really thought that he was equal to NATO. If you remember, before the war started, he was rolling out a lot of the demands, like literally ultimatums to NATO to withdraw and basically get out of the Eastern Europe. So that all culminated in his attempts to basically get to Kiev, get blitzkrieg, get to the country, and so on. In the coming days, I'm actually going to make a special video where I'm going to be going over the article that goes over the major events and basically how the war developed to the situation as it is now. But the point still stands for now that Putin really wanted, and this article talks about from the documents that were acquired from the Russians that were trying to invade. Like, so all of the trolls that are now saying that, well, Russians never actually wanted to capture Kiev and never actually wanted to capture Ukraine. Yeah. Complete bullshit. So that failed completely and miserably. And that was that's the big strike against Putin, against his army, and against his power. Because not only the operation failed, the way that operation was executed has cost Russia very, very, very dearly. Because that's literally what gets us to the second point. Second is the loss of army. When Blitzkrieg failed, the consequences of that failure of the Blitzkrieg was also the fact that Putin and his efforts to essentially do everything fast and dirty ended up costing him the best units. Because what he was hoping for is that a lot of these units would just come in straight in the country and then they would capture all the key objectives. Yet they stumbled against partisan activity, people blowing up columns of tanks, and resistance from every single citizen of Ukraine. And that basically costed Putin a lot of really good units with a lot of good equipment, with a lot of good troops died during that period. And after that, even the second mistake was also in Kherson. When in Kherson, while a lot of the, for example, VDV escaped from Kherson, a lot of them actually got trapped there, and for a longer time they were also punished for it. So right now, Russian army, which is like what 300, 400,000 people, only about a third, including Wagner, are essentially, well, we call them now elites, but they're elites only compared to the regular forces like the Mobics and so on. For the most part, they are just like a regular army forces that would be at the start of the war. So it's pitiful, and that's definitely a huge loss for Putin. Next is a little bit more towards the fact that Putin did lose his blitzkrieg. We need to understand that Putin and his vision that he projected to Europe, to the world, to the West. I'll remind you that when everyone gave Ukraine only 3 days of time to live essentially against Russian aggression, and why all the Western leaders, when they, for example, met Minister of Foreign Affairs Kuleba, they basically just looked at him very sadly, shake his hand like they saw him for the last time, because Russia projected a lot of image outside itself, especially Putin. He was really, really, really great at building this image of a strong man. And that image of a strong man is something that started to crumble. And it's not completely crumbled yet, but we can say that it's definitely way over the half, right? The idea that Putin is this unbeatable, like, godlike figure that is completely irresistible, like a lot of those arguments that were made early, that Russia is this immovable force, like what are they called, the realist positions that says that, oh, there is a geopolitical power and it exists and it will exist. And this is one of the major things that I also wanted to talk, is that we live in a perspective that what is happening now is going to happen forever, in a sense of like we don't consider that things might change radically. What I want to kind of put a seed in you to consider, to start considering and thinking about, is what would be the world where Russia doesn't exist, right? We always consider as like, yes, 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 there's Russia, there's always a political power, so they're going to stay a political power, so now we're going to have place. But Russia right now in a position basically where they are under threat. And there is a possibility, which is non-zero for sure, and Putin actually is saying about that himself, that Russia will break apart, that there will be no this great power anymore. We think that because Russia existed in one way or another for such a long time, that this empire is going to continue existing. But that has been the story of every empire. It existed right up until the moment that it didn't. And in 20th century, we saw a lot of empires fall. And the Russian Empire is pretty much the last one that still stands. So it is not impossible that Russia will fall and there will not be an empire anymore after this war. And I want you really to kind of, like, I know how this sounds like on a surface level, but try to take this in and think about what would the world be like. Next one is derivative of the previous one, which is the loss of support. Russia has no allies. The position of the authoritarian powers that they were projecting the power outside says, I am dominant, I am strong, is no more, because Russian army turned out to be a paper tiger. That the army that's supposed to be challenging NATO, that they were saying, like, all of the videos comparing Russia power versus NATO power or versus US power, whatnot, that this supposedly army that's supposed to challenge NATO somehow, right now is barely trying to move on the one small section of the front line of 40 kilometers. It's a joke. And everyone sees it as a joke because Russia almost doesn't have any supporters. Look at the United Nations vote. And I know that United Nations is a joke, but that's exactly the point. If even on this like hilariously irrelevant organizational stage, the countries are not supporting Russia, then who cares about it? Russia doesn't have any friends, at least not the friends that matter. What is it, Iran, Eritrea, Belarus? North Korea. Yeah, that's not a very good club to be in. So again, coming to previous point, there might be a time where even if Russia maybe not fall apart, it will be irrelevant, completely irrelevant to the world and to the people around it. Then Russia lost the terror war. Russia lost the ability to inflict terror. Not only the fact that the army has fallen, right? We also saw that, well, okay, but Russia still have a lot of capabilities, to inflict damage. They have a lot of weapons, a lot of stockpiles. But Russia essentially lost to Ukraine, and Ukraine won again. How? Well, Russia said, we're going to freeze Ukraine. We're going to freeze Europe. Remember those? They say we're gonna cut the gas and you're gonna freeze. We're gonna destroy the energy network of Ukraine and Ukraine is gonna freeze. Nothing happened. Ukraine lived through it. If you remember me talking like in November, December, and I said, yeah, Ukraine will get through it. You shouldn't worry. Yeah, of course we should support. Of course we should send, generators because in that sense we reduce the casualty number. But Ukrainians held through. They made the tenets of indestructibility. They supported each other. Russia still doesn't get that they are not fighting a war against Ukrainian army. They are fighting a war against a nation, a united nation standing against the despotism and yeah, imperial desires of Russia. And that is a road to nowhere. So with this winter over, not only Russia lost whatever we discussed before, but also Russia lost the ability to inflict terror. People all across the world saw that whenever even Russia tries to use terrorist tactics, that's why Russia is a terrorist state, because they're using terrorist tactics, it doesn't break. It doesn't break even one country of Ukraine because it resists. And most important and final point that I want to nail down is what Russia lost with all that combined is that Russia lost the future. Their country, whatever it comes outcome, like even if we take any scenario, let's say Russia just gets out of Ukraine, let's say peacekeepers come into Crimea, peacekeepers come from UN, come into Donbass regions, and like reintegration process into Ukraine comes peacefully. And let's say China plays some kind of a mediator, and then, for example, war criminals are able to escape captivity, but they're penalized. And instead of Russia paying something, let's just say that Russia will have to deliver certain resources for free. Anyway, like the mildest scenario we can imagine for Russia. What Russia has lost is perspective for future. The population of Russia has already been quite bad, and it's been having a huge hit. Moreover, the moral damage that Putin and his regime and all of the Russians that are supporting the war right now, that are building the image of this Slava like Russia, all of these guys, they are damaging the reputation and the future of every single Russian that lives now and gonna live in decades forward. The fact that the country did a biggest genocidal war of aggression after the Second World War in Europe, that shame is not going to be easy to get away from. Germany, despite their reconciliation, despite their ability and like desire to actually get over the Nazi past, and even stating like big thanks, the German society saying thanks to all of the allies that freed themselves, that freed Germans from the Nazi occupations, because essentially Germany was occupied by Nazis. Russia is not even close with that. And all of the perspectives, all of the investments, all of the desire to have business and whatnot, they're not going to come back. Moreover, we already were living in an energy world that has already natural resources like green energy and whatnot, and there was already talks of transitioning, right? So, but because Russian resources were so cheap, Europe just said like, well, like, is it worth it? And now we see, yes, it is worth it. So I'm not sure that Russia can ever recover and start using those resources for anything. Potentially, that will be like this. So what Russia might end up being is a depleted resources of investments. Russia can be depleted of population growth because like man population is out there dying right now. Russia is going to be depleted of future because there is a big stigma around people that are from Russia. And a lot of these contracts and a lot of these negotiation visa agreements, like exchange programs with students, integration into Western world, that's all gone. That's not coming back for decades. So whatever the outcome is, even if it ends favorably and Russia stays the same and whatnot, and even if they start reconciliation process right now, the damage is incredible. And that damage will be felt in Russia for generations. And this is not something that Russians yet understand, but I want us to understand that whatever Russia is doing, it's not going to be a victory that Russia is coming out of. Russia is coming out of this war as a pariah state and a complete disgrace to the humanity that it is. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm glad I was able to make this talk to you. I will stream tomorrow. Thanks so much for all of the supporters again. And Slava Ukraini. I love you all. And I'll see you next time.